Hi, this is Gurasi Singh, and you're listening to my Thick Accent podcast. So, today we are diving deep into a fascinating topic that is sure to challenge your perceptions and broaden your understanding of human nature. As immigrants ourselves, we know firsthand the challenges and complexities that come with leaving one's homeland to start a new life in a foreign country. But have you ever wondered why migration is such a distinctive feature of humans? And it is not limited to humans, but can also be seen in the animal kingdom. Well, my guest today is a true expert in this field who has a passion for understanding migration from a biological perspective. She's a multilingual lawyer, a humanitarian professional with a strong passion for addressing the challenges faced by refugees, migrants, and indigenous people, and is currently pursuing Masters in Migration and Refugee Studies from the American University in Cairo, Egypt. We'll also be exploring how this knowledge can help us better understand the challenges faced by immigrants and marginalized communities and how we can work towards building more inclusive and empathetic societies. We guarantee that by the end of this episode, you will have a newfound appreciation for the complexity and richness of this topic. And remember, open your mind and let it flow. This podcast is sure to make you grow. Please welcome Marielys.
Hello, good Assis. Hello, LinkedIn community and listeners of this podcast. I am extremely honored to be featured in this episode today.
Welcome, Marielys. And I should mention it to all my listeners that you are joining us today from Cairo, Egypt, and which is, I believe, 6 to 7 hours ahead of the EST time, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so before we get into the topics that we are going to discuss today, I want to start by asking you, what is that one habit, Marielys, you adopted that has changed your life?
Reading many books. I
Mhm.
think that no habit is more useful to enrich one's knowledge than reading. And I think I read approximately around 10 books per month if I don't have a heavy schedule. But I love to read books on evolutionary biology, migration in the animal
Mhm.
kingdom, and effective writing. And I think that is the best hobby a human being can ever cultivate.
Absolutely, yes. Great to hear that. Okay, so let's talk chronologically because you have traveled to and studied in like various nations, and 40, I believe, I was reading on LinkedIn, it said that you have been to 40 countries. Is that so?
Yes, that's correct. I have had the fortune to travel a lot because I have the American passport, so that opens the doors to many countries without requirements for
Mhm.
visas. And that is something I have espoused previously in LinkedIn how being born with the right or wrong passport can open or close
Mm.
many doors in your life.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's just start by talking about your homeland, Puerto Rico. So tell us about your formative years there and what the focus was on growing up.
Yes, so I was born in Ponce, Puerto Rico, but I was actually raised in a small village called Jayuya, which I love with all my heart. It is very dear to me. But Jayuya has a lot of limitations. Currently, it doesn't have a university for people there. We still have a shop where you can actually go in person to rent DVDs.
Oh.
You know that
Mm.
Netflix sort of like replaced that, but we do still have that. So you can imagine how what is the word that I am looking for? I don't
Traditional?
want to use. Yes, it's like we still stick to the traditions.
Yeah.
We haven't evolved so much, and actually getting there by road is really
Hmm.
tricky because it's surrounded by a lot of vegetation. But we have a beautiful scenery. We have beautiful rivers. We have actually indigenous people's relics there in
Mhm.
Jayuya. We had a lot of indigenous heritage there, and it's amazing.
Wow.
I love my beautiful village, and but to search for better opportunities, of course, we have to to move on from where we come from.
Uh,
So I haven't been there in 2 years.
so what the focus was on growing up? How was it like just growing up there?
Yes, so growing up there, I was very surrounded by nature. My mother is a chicken enthusiast. She has a
Hmm,
farm and
interesting.
yes, she has many a deep connection with animals, with birds in particular. She's very fond of chickens and doves, and also she had horses and pigs and stuff like that. So my fascination with nature
Hmm.
was instilled by my mother, who raised me among the beauties of nature. She likes also to cultivate like pineapples and mango trees and orange trees, and
Wow.
she has a home where she has a lot of land. And yeah, that's where my fascination with animals started.
Yeah, definitely that whole passion for understanding the animal kingdom. I think it runs in the family. So that's for sure it comes from your mother.
Yes.
I also read somewhere that you used to play piano, or you still play piano?
Yes, occasionally it's like a hobby. I am not a professional, but I am like an intermediate beginner, so I can put together a few pieces. And one of my favorite pianists is David Nephew. He's from
Mhm.
Oregon in the United States. I had the pleasure to meet him a few months ago and saw him play live. And
Mm.
he's such an inspiration. Yeah, but with my heavy schedule, I haven't had time to develop my skills further, but I
Mhm.
am a piano enthusiast and I love, to occasionally touch the keys.
Okay, okay. So what's something that people don't know about Puerto Rico that would like to share?
Um, yes, the fact that Puerto Rico is also a nest for indigenous heritage, that is not very known. We are known for Despacito and reggaeton music and Bad Bunny,
Yeah.
but Puerto Rico is very rich in indigenous heritage, and I think that is very important. We don't give it as much publicity and as much emphasis as it should be, as it should have. Um, we have so much to offer tourists, far more than the area of San Juan, especially in the central area of the island, where you can find stones written with indigenous symbols. It's really interesting. We have a very, very rich history in indigenous heritage.
And I remember you were also sharing that it is a territory of the US, and it is also subjected to like colonial forces at some point, right?
That is correct. That is why you hear my thick accent in English, because Puerto Rico was first invaded. I That's a strong word, but that's pretty much close to it.
Mhm.
First by Spain, so our main language is Spanish, and then we were also invaded later on by the United States. So we have the American citizenship, and we speak English as well.
Mhm.
And we have sort of like a weird dialect where we mix Spanish and English, and it's called
Mm.
Spanglish. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you mentioned before that you also have that in Punjab.
Yes, yes, that's true. We have so I speak Punjabi and Hindi as well along with English. So we do speak in Pinglish, which is Punjabi and English, and then Hindi and English. So yeah, I know what you're talking about that. So let's just pivot towards your career trajectory that you have had, Marielys, because you are also a lawyer, you also have a bachelor's in industrial microbiology, and you are now pursuing master's in migration and refugee studies. Tell us all about these interests that you have got into.
Yes, so it's a lot. I know. I have a very interdisciplinary background, if you would say.
Mhm.
So first, when I decided to study outside of my village, because we don't have a university there anymore, I wanted to pursue a degree that would allow me the employment opportunities right off after finishing college.
Mhm.
And as you know, there is more probability of landing a job if you have a STEM fields degree than if you have a social sciences degree.
Hmm.
So this was a huge motivation for me to pursue a degree in that field. So initially, I thought I wanted to be a doctor like my father, and do some humanitarian work later on. But it turns out life took me through a different path, and I do
Hmm.
humanitarian work, but in another way, not in a medical field. So, after finishing my bachelor's degree in industrial microbiology, I decided to go to law school and pursue a Juris Doctor degree, for which I have the bar pending. And later on, I also pursued a legal master's in human rights because I felt that my calling was more addressed towards helping people in need. And I
Hmm.
felt that my strengths more aligned with the social sciences field.
Hmm.
But that also created like a nice connection where I now love to explore and connect science and nature and biology with migration and refugee issues because I think this is a
Yeah.
novel approach that has not been explored too much.
Hmm. And I feel like that understanding of the law also kind of helps you to see the bigger picture of really understanding the migration and the whole citizenship part of it as well.
Of course, definitely the legal background helps you approach things in a more analytical way,
Yeah.
and also the scientific background
Hmm.
helps you approach things in a more logical way. So I
Yeah.
guess I am very grateful that I have a balanced education.
And which was the first city or the place that you moved out to? First time from your house?
Yes, so first time after college, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia for my first job with the International Rescue Committee.
Mhm.
And that was a beautiful experience. We had the Georgia Aquarium. I had the experience of diving and swimming with shark whales
Hmm.
for the first time in my life. It was really crazy. Atlanta is such a beautiful city. It's full of diversity and beautiful nature. And it was amazing to live there. So I stayed there for 1 year and then I went on to pursue my legal master's in Vienna.
So tell us about your first time that you moved out of your house. What was like going on in your mind? Or you said that you moved to Atlanta, Georgia for the first time, then you moved to Vienna. Tell us about your first days in these places. How were they like?
In Vienna, it was really tough because Austrians in general, they're very protective of the German language. And I
Hmm.
remember the first time I went to get my groceries
Hmm.
and I tried to speak a little bit of German because I was taking lessons since I was living in Atlanta. I was getting ready for that step. And I remember getting a very hostile look on her face when I
Hmm.
went to buy my groceries because she instantly knew from my accent in German that I didn't belong, that I was a foreigner.
Yeah.
And the way that she handled me back my change, it was so hostile that I was almost put into tears because I couldn't believe that this was the welcome I was getting while moving abroad. So my perception of Vienna was very high. I thought, wow, I'm going to the capital of the classical music.
Hmm.
It's one of the best cities in the world. I bet people are very happy there. I didn't expect that I would experience firsthand xenophobia when I moved there for the first months. I was almost in tears,
Hmm.
because the shock, it was very disheartening for me to have flown all the way from the United States, cross all the
Yeah.
sea to arrive and be treated like this. But it happens.
Yeah. This is what happens, right? That accents have been the source of many, I would have to say that many, hilarious conversations, heartwarming conversations, and even awkward moments in our lives. And I think from trying to decipher the thick Spanish accent, can I say that? Spanish accent? Yeah, trying to decipher those
Yes.
thick Spanish accents to me trying to explain the significance of wearing a turban to curious strangers. These stories does like showcase the beauty of cultural diversity, but at the same time it kind of gives you the reality of the people's perceptions of different religions, different cultures, and different diverse backgrounds.
For sure, for sure.
What other differences that you saw? Or was there something that you were completely taken aback by apart from the accents?
Um, the fact that Vienna is a city that is not dependent on cars, that public transportation is at the heart of the city.
Really?
That
Okay.
for me, it was such a shock, but a positive one,
Mm-hmm.
because this also helps the environment, the ecosystem, the gas emissions. And coming from the United States, where we always have to rely on the use of cars, living in that city where I never had to buy a car, I never had to pay for gasoline, and I just simply hop on into the metro. It was such an amazing experience that I wish we had it available in the US in all the cities.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Good to know. And I think I should mention and share it with you that even in Montreal, it's we are heavily dependent on the public transport. I've been living here from past like 5 years, and I think I never felt the need to get a car to really move within the city, because the metro is just always like few minutes away from you, and it can take you like from end to end within the city.
That's amazing. That's something in the US you don't have yet.
And you also were moving, within the US also, like you were telling me about Atlanta, Georgia. And you also moved to Arizona. That was the last time we spoke. You were in Arizona. So tell us about those experiences of just migrating to different parts of the same country.
Yes, so my life has been quite a migration experience, if you would
Yeah,
say so.
absolutely.
First, I believe I was internally displaced from Puerto Rico to the United States to find a job because we cannot access job opportunities in Puerto Rico. So, after studying in Vienna for 1 year, I got a job at the University of Arizona, working with the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples' Rights. So, I
Hmm.
decided to relocate to Tucson, Arizona, and I can tell you, Gurasis, it's so beautiful when you go to the Saguaro National Park and you start to see all the cacti and all the beautiful nature that is in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely breathtaking.
And what about the any cultural differences that you saw while just migrating to all these places?
Yes, so with Arizona, I would say I felt a little bit more at home
Mm,
because since Arizona is a border state with Mexico, and there's also a lot of migration flows from Mexico into Arizona, Texas, California, New Mexico. Arizona has adopted Spanish sort of like a second language.
mm,
So you actually read on the bus the instructions first in English and they are translated into Spanish. And if you call, you can have the service in English and also in Spanish. So you feel
interesting.
more welcome. And also the gastronomical aspect, where you can find a lot of Mexican, Salvadorian, Guatemalan restaurants that
Mm,
also made me feel right at home because I am a Latino. So you get to drop the English for a while and start speaking in your mother tongue, and that's very rewarding and relaxing.
hmm. Of course, I'm sure there's always great to have a little bit of familiarity, when you move to like any new place. And that's what happens with the people coming from India, for example. We are still able to find a lot of our community here, and you always feel a little bit like home. So I don't know what you mentioned there. Okay, so Marielys, let's just get deeper into the fascinating world of, evolutionary biology and migration that you're talking about. And I remember you highlighting in our earlier conversation that migration is not the only distinctive feature of humans, but it is also expressed in animal kingdom. So I'll pass it on to you. Please educate us.
Okay, good. I see. So I want to say that it all started in Africa,
Hmm.
and that we, the Homo sapiens, this is our scientific name, began our migration journey out of Africa some 60,000 years ago. So what we see today happening is not new. It's actually an adaptation for our survival. Human beings have been conducting migration since the beginning of time. Before
Hmm.
us, the Homo erectus conducted the earliest known human migration about 2 million years ago.
Hmm.
And like all other animal species, we do so and did so in the past in search of food, water, and better living conditions.
Yeah.
This is not new. So I'm kind of surprised that it is, for some conservative countries, a matter
Hmm.
of controversy, and I think many of those issues are because many of the people who make legislation or draft policies, they do not have a biological background to understand that this is a distinctive feature of human beings as well as many other species as well.
Mhm,
So, as I believe, this is a survival adaptation and it will stay with us forever from the beginning of our times until we become extinct.
mhm,
And there are many species that I like to highlight every week on my LinkedIn account
mhm, mhm,
that perform huge migratory travels, such as the whales, the dolphins, the monarch butterfly, the polar bear. You have the
mhm,
emperor penguin. I can make a list, and I will not finish in the podcast
mhm,
about
mhm,
that this is a survival adaptation and that it will continue to happen, especially now when we have climate change affecting our spaces, especially, for example, in Puerto Rico, climate change is predicting that it will increase the sea levels, so the island will become smaller. So of course there will be more human displacement from Puerto Rico from the coast, and people will begin to migrate into the mainland because obviously they will not have territory to survive there. So yeah, that's basically what I try to expose daily in my LinkedIn page, and I would like to bring forward this discussion into more spaces because I think it is important to know that migration is a survival adaptation. And
mhm.
also, I did my thesis for my legal master's in human rights, addressing xenophobia from an evolutionary biology perspective. In this thesis, I try to convey the idea that xenophobia is also a distinctive characteristic from human beings that we evolved when we were practicing tribalism since the beginning of time. Because if we go back in time to the beginning of our history,
Mhm.
human beings organized in tribes, and they
Yep.
had to contend with the perils outside of the caves, let's say, and also with the perils of other tribes trying to steal the resources that the
Mm,
first tribe had hunted down.
mhm.
So
Yep.
it's intricate and it's very interesting how evolutionary biology shapes our behavior even today.
Tell me a little bit more about those examples, if you can share that you share on your LinkedIn.
Yes, so in my LinkedIn, I like to share some carousels about, for example, last time I shared a carousel about how refugees affect wildlife migration. And this
Mhm,
is has been studied, but very little. I think I will be developing a paper on this subject where refugee settlements are creating barriers for animals and disrupt their ecosystems and migratory patterns. And this happens, for example, in the United States. When you have border walls, you know that under the Trump administration, there was a
yeah,
huge motivation to build the walls more.
of course.
This
Yeah.
disrupts the migration of the jaguar, who needs to cross from Mexico into the United States in the desert for hunting and breeding grounds.
Mm,
And the barriers that we humans create not only affect our migration, but also those of other species. And I
mhm,
think that's not been addressed at a larger scale. And I think
mm.
it's important if we want to talk about conservation and the environment, we have to address these issues as well.
So, Marielys, there was this one post I came across on your feed that I read, and it was about, the what kind of relationships are you trying to build on this platform, and you brought in symbiosis and other factors, and I think I'll let you take over and explain that what you were talking about in that post.
Yes, Gurasi. So for me, biology is such a beautiful topic because you can actually interlink it with almost anything. So I thought about this analogy about what kind of relationships are we trying to build on LinkedIn. And there's actually three types of symbiosis in nature. You can have mutualism, which is sort of like we are doing today now in this podcast.
Yeah.
We are looking to build mutual beneficial relationships that are based on collaboration.
Hmm.
And an analogy to this is when bees pollinate the flowers, they provide the flowers with the disbursement of their seeds, and they get nectar and pollen in return. So it's a
Mm.
really positive situation. It's a win win situation. But like everything in nature, you also have negative interactions like commensalism. When, for example, people are lurking in LinkedIn and never leave a like or a
Or a
comment or
comment.
share your
Yeah.
content. So
Yeah.
it's like when barnacles attach themselves to whales to feed on plankton, and they get the free ride from the whale, but the whale gets nothing in return, something like that.
Yeah.
And the worst of all, which is parasitism. And one example I like to bring into this is when other content creators steal your content and pass it off as their own. This
Yeah.
is like the analogy of the flea that attaches to the dog's skin to feed on its blood, and the
Mm.
dog suffers discomfort and health problems in return. This is a win lose situation. It's pretty awful. But you
Mm.
have all three of these symbiotic relationships in nature. And
Hmm.
I love that you and I, we are building a mutualistic relationship that is
Yeah.
beneficial for both.
I'm so intrigued by this that we have so much to learn from the creatures around you. The one that you said where people actually steal other people's content. I think I would never be able to like think of a word, but now I think now I know it's called sort of the parasitism. So
Yes.
it's very, very fascinating. So, Marielys, you're also working on your book. Tell us a little bit about that as well, and when can we expect this to be out?
Yes, so everyone I meet tells me they want to write a book. So it's sort of like one of those desires that we all treasure in our hearts. I would like to write a book about understanding migration from a biological perspective because I think it is important to bring forward this discussion to understand that migration should not be criminalized. I have worked in detention proceedings and
Hmm.
deportation proceedings, and the way some human beings are treated, it's really inhumane, and it really is undignified. And I think that bringing forward this discussion can even have an impact on lawmaking. If
Hmm.
we look at it from the perspective that it is a survival adaptation and that we will do it. It doesn't matter how we do it, we will do anything in our power to survive.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking by the time I finish my master's degree in migration and refugee studies, I hope to have finished the first draft.
Hmm.
But like, as you know, it's a really complicated subject. I might need some assistance from other professionals as well,
Yeah.
experts in the evolutionary biology field who can assist me. So I'm guessing at around before I turn 40, I would like to
Hmm.
have the book finished.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, Marilis, I just want to go back to your, masters that you did in the Central European University, and which was you were focusing on the xenophobia and how it is rooted in the evolutionary biology. If you can, give us like a layman conclusion of, or not the conclusion, but layman understanding of what is it or why does that happen, that would be really great if you can tell us about that.
Yes, so since the beginning of time, humans discovered that they cannot survive on their own. If a single human being tried to take down the woolly mammoth, for example, that existed back in that time, the woolly mammoth would certainly kill that human being. So
Hmm.
we had to organize ourselves in groups in order to survive. This was another survival adaptation to organize in groups. The problem is that organizing in groups created in group cooperation and also out group competition because different groups organized, and then those groups were competing for different resources available in nature.
Hmm.
And this, if you extrapolate this to today, what you see happening is when you have mass influx of migration into different countries,
Yeah.
the countries are just scared that these foreigners will steal their resources. They
Hmm.
will steal the government resources, their food, maybe their territories, compete for houses resources. And this primal fear stems from the beginning of human nature, from our natural history, which is not brought forward into the discussion of why xenophobia happens, because it is a competition for resources as an adaptation to natural selection. So, in order to survive, we need to secure resources and we compete with each other for such resources. I like to bring simple examples, like, for example, when you go to LinkedIn and look up a job and you have 1,000 participants applying for one single
Yeah.
job. That is competition, my friend, right there happening in front of our eyes. Or
Yeah.
when you go into a crowded metro in Bogota, Colombia, for example, and you have very few seats available and you see everyone rushing to take that seat.
Yeah.
That is competition. Competition is inevitably interlinked into our nature. And that is what stems from the xenophobic sentiment, is that fear that you will come to steal what I believe is to be mine. And
Mm.
sometimes this not only extrapolates to social services or money or jobs, but also into cultural um, appropriations. You
Mm.
think, oh, if we let in all these Muslims into our Christian community, this will displace our Christianity, our
Mm.
Christian values. And then you see that that is why nationalist countries like Hungary put up a huge pushback to prevent this from happening, because this fear stems from the fact that they are scared that they will come to steal their identities and their resources. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it happens in terms of the languages also, right? People are afraid that, for instance, in Quebec, since I'm living here, and I do hear from people that they do have this fear of the language getting extinct, the French language. So they try to incorporate it into every day to day activities that humans do, maybe at the coffee shops, everywhere you can see the signs, even the metro, all the announcements are in French, because they, maybe that's what sort of like you are referring to, that they have that fear of language getting extinct. That's why they're just trying to just keeping a hold of it and continuing to use it.
Exactly
Yeah.
so.
So now, Marielys, we're in the final segment of the podcast. I call it Beneath the Accent, because we are knowing each other beneath the accent. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. You can answer them in one word or a sentence or however you feel like. The idea is just to know more about you. So, ready?
Ready.
So since we were talking about animal kingdom, tell me, if you had to describe yourself as an animal, what would it be and why?
Amazing question. I have just the answer for you. I would describe myself as a vulture. Why?
Hmm.
Because unlike eagles, when they are sky high, plummeting into the river to kill,
Mm-hmm.
the vultures are noble in the sense that they wait for the prey to be dead before consuming it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the vulture is a very fascinating creation, or evolutionary species, as you would like to refer to it,
Yeah.
because it awaits for the prey to be dead. It doesn't kill, it
Hmm.
just waits. And some people have disdain towards creatures that perform sort of like decomposition in nature. They're
Hmm.
like the garbage man of nature.
Hmm.
But they are so intrinsically noble because they don't kill, you know?
Hmm.
So I would describe myself as a vulture because I consider vultures to be noble
Hmm.
and respectful of life.
Wow, I definitely learned something new today. Okay. So if you could had to eat one meal or any dish for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I have to say it has to be mofongo from Puerto Rico, because the mofongo is a food that is based on green plantain, and you can eat it filled with shrimp or chicken. And I just associate it with my upbringing and my beautiful island. And it's more than just taste, it's part of my identity.
Okay. Okay. So name three things on your bucket list.
Three things in my bucket list. I would like to write and finish my first book.
Mm-hmm.
understanding migration from a biological perspective. Second thing, I want to have a family, um,
Mm-hmm.
probably one child and one puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And last thing, I just want to contribute my knowledge to society and feel a sense of fulfillment in the work that I do.
Okay. And I remember you were also telling me you also want to visit Taj Mahal at some point. So, at what number is that on the list?
Huh. Yes, that's, I would say that's like number four because life
Mm,
is really short. I must hurry.
yeah.
Perhaps you can take me, good Assis.
Sure, absolutely. We should go there together for sure. Okay, so if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would love to have the power to give more to the people I love.
Hmm.
Um, because, of course, we are limited in money, sometimes in time,
Yeah.
sometimes. I would love to have the superpower to give to my loved ones everything they ask me for. I don't know if
Mm.
that is a good thing or a bad thing. I just wish
Hmm.
I could provide them with everything they need.
Hmm. Okay. Is there an idea that changed your life?
I guess the idea that I promote every day on LinkedIn, the idea that we can actually bridge the gap between the natural and social sciences
Hmm.
and bring forward the discussion of biology and how it integrates to every aspects of our lives.
So, what was your dream career as a child?
My dream career as a child, it was to become a doctor like my father.
What a coincidence. I had the same. I think it's also because of the Asian parents, asking their children to become doctors, lawyers, and engineers. So maybe my maternal side of the family, everybody is a doctor. So maybe I was a little influenced by that, and I wanted to be a doctor as well. Okay.
We all want to be doctors when we are children.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. So what's the best piece of advice that someone ever gave you?
You try, you fail, you try, you fail, but the true failure is when you stop trying. And I think
Mm,
I heard that from a movie called The Haunted Mansion from Disney. And
okay.
that is the best piece of advice I can ever share with anyone in this world.
Absolutely. Love that. Okay. Is there any worst piece of advice that someone ever gave you?
The worst piece of advice?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that you got me there again, good assist. Let me see. So one of the worst pieces of advice I have ever received was when people tell you that you have to stick to your family no matter what. I don't
Hmm.
think this is true, and when they come to you saying that family weighs more than blood or water, I don't know how the saying goes.
Blood is thicker than water.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. This is not true because if a family member disrupts your self esteem, humiliates you, does not support
Hmm.
your dreams, you have to cut them loose. So I would
Yeah.
say that is one of the worst pieces of advice I have ever heard.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think I understand the point where you are coming from because we all have had certain family members whom you don't feel that comfortable having around and they don't emit the vibe that connects with you. So I completely understand what you meant there.
Yes, sometimes they can bring more harm than good. So you have to
Hmm.
cut them loose, like anything bad for you in your life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Marielys, now if you have to describe your career trajectory and your life path as of now, today, how would you describe that in 3 words?
Oh, beautiful, diverse, and full of knowledge.
Love that. Okay. And finally, if you could leave me with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Keep it up, Gurasis. I admire so much your enthusiasm and your creativity for my Take Accent podcast, and I believe you will reach higher, higher skies. And I encourage you to never quit and keep it up. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you, Marielys, for all your kind words. And on that note, thank you so much for being on the podcast and adding value to my listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel honored to be here.
Hey, listener, thank you for making it to the end. I highly appreciate you listening the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't as yet, and please share with your friends or anybody you think would like it. And like I always say, we encourage you to follow your heart, but also us on Instagram. The handle is mythicaccent. You can also leave us a review or write to us at hello@mythicaccent.com. So stay tuned and let's continue knowing each other beneath the accent.